and I'm going to introduce Hartman Deetz. And his tribe was the one who originally celebrated Thanksgiving. Hi, Hartman.
Hi, Joel. How you doing?
Good. How many people were in your tribe?
Well, there isn't an exact count of how many people were in my tribe when the English folks landed. But when the English people landed in my country, there was 70 different villages. And each village might have anywhere from about 200 to the smallest villages to the biggest villages having 3,000 or 4,000 people. So with that, maybe about 60,000, maybe about 70,000 people.
Okay. What was the name of your tribe?
The name of my tribe is Wampanoag, and that means people of the dawn. And that's because we come from way far out in the easternmost part of the land of North America. So we're the first people in North America to see the sunrise over the ocean. And that place is Cape Cod in southeastern Massachusetts. That's the place where we are.
Why is Indian the wrong word?
Well, Indian is the wrong word because Indian is the word that we use from people from India. And we are not from India. We are from Wampanoag, the Dawnland. And we are Wampanoag, the Dawnland people. And so we got named Indians when Christopher Columbus tried to find a way to go to India without having to go around Africa to get there, or across the land to get there, because they wanted the spices in that part of Europe in the time. And so they were making tons of money off the spices and trading spices, and they wanted to find a way where they could just sail a boat straight to where they could get the spices, and then they could make more money. But they didn't know that there's a whole 2 continents in between them and Asia. So they set off to sail out of Europe, and they sailed west out of Europe, and they thought when they hit land that they were in India. And so he said, well, if we're in India, these must be Indians. But they weren't in India. They were in
America.
They were in the Caribbean. And the people weren't Indians. They were the Arawak people down there.
When did your tribe first meet the Pilgrims?
Well, we first met the Pilgrims who came off the Mayflower in 1620. And the first place they landed in our country was out in Nauset. And they were starving and dying on their boat. And they were sick. A lot of them were sick. And the first thing that they did was they went and they got off the boat and they dug up a bunch of our folks' graves. And they stole all the different things that we had buried our people with, to send them off to the next world. And they stole the food that we had buried them with. So they stole it somewhat to live, but also just without caring much about the people that were there, or the people who had passed on. So that was something that people didn't really feel very good about. They weren't very happy. So the next morning, a bunch of Wampanoag people went out to where they had dug up the graves and shot arrows at them until they left. And then they went to Plymouth, where there was no people left, because the sickness had wiped out everybody on that area. That whole town had been wiped out. So they stayed there and there was nobody to chase them out.
And then what? You made friends with them?
We did make friends with them somewhat, eventually. Because that sickness, which wiped out the town of Patuxet, which became the town of Plymouth when the English people moved into it, had wiped out more than half of the Wampanoag people. Almost 2/3 of the Wampanoag people just died of this sickness. And we had enemies that were not very far away, the Narragansett people. And we wanted to be able to be strong enough to fight against the Narragansett people. And the English people on the Mayflower were not very strong themselves. They were sick and they were starving too. So we both needed help from somebody, and we decided to help each other.
So that's how you became friends?
That's how we worked together. I don't know if we became friends, because they still weren't that friendly to us.
How did you plant the corn back then?
Well, back then, as we saw it, the earth needed to eat, just like we need to eat. We see and we saw the earth as a living thing. So the first thing we had to do, if we wanted food from the earth, we had to feed the earth. So the first thing we would do is we would make mounds of earth, just like when belly gets big and round when it has a baby inside it.
Like a mountain?
Yeah, we'd make the earth big and round, just like that. And inside there'd be fish to feed the earth, and then we'd put the seeds. We'd put corn in top, and then around the corn we'd put bean seeds. And around the base we'd put squash or melon. And these three plants, when they grew together, they would help each other out. The corn would go straight up towards the sky, and the beans would climb the stalk. The beans would put nitrogen into the soil. It'd help feed the earth also. And then that would help feed the corn and the squash would spread out, and it has big leaves, really big leaves. So what it would do, those big leaves would shade the ground, and it would keep the ground moist, and it'd keep little weeds from coming up as well. So the three of them together all helped each other out, and we'd plant them together. And that's how we would plant corn. This was something that Squanto taught the English folks, and it's a part of what made him an important person, and an important Wampanoag person for the English people to know.
Did your tribe live in houses or teepees?
Well, a teepee is a kind of house. And we did live in houses, but the kind of house we lived in were not teepees. The types of houses we lived in were called wigwams, and what the English people would call wigwams. And our houses were made of frames of bent cedar poles and covered with bark, or sometimes with woven mats made out of cattail reeds. And they were round, and they had small doors and no windows, and a place for the smoke to get out at the very, very top.
Sort of like a chimney, except the hole is a bit smaller.
Yeah.
Did you eat the seed from a pumpkin?
Yes, we would eat the seeds from the pumpkin, and sometimes we would put the pumpkin right into the fire with maple sap in it, maple sugar, and ooh, it'd be cooked up and it'd be delicious and sweet and yummy. And it'd be all burned on black on the outside and sweet and gooey in the middle. Very tasty. I like it now.
What are these?
Okay. Well, I brought a few things with me, and these are quahog shells. They're a type of clam, and they only come from a very small part of the world. They come from between Cape Ann, which is in the Canadian Maritimes, and Long Island Sound near New York, and everywhere in between. But it's not a very big part of the world, so just a little teeny part of the world, and it's special to us. The purple and the white is a part of what distinguishes it, and we would break it up like you see here. We would break it into little pieces, and then we would grind it down, and we would make beads out of it. And these beads were used to string together and make belts and make different patterns of those belts that were different signs of treaties that we would give between communities and different promises that were made. So when we would make an agreement between two communities, these wampum belts would be records of those treaties.
Is this rock special to you?
This rock was made by Wampanoag people into the shape that it is now. It used to, you see how it's got the groove on the top?
Yeah.
And how it had a sharp edge here?
Yeah.
It used to be put onto a angled stick like this, and it was used for chopping out the inside of rounded objects. Do you know how long ago Wampanoag people made this piece?
No.
This adze is what the tool is called.
2 hours?
They made this adze probably 1,000 years ago. This is probably a 1,000-year-old tool.
Wow.
Pretty cool, huh?
Yeah.
These are the style of shoes that our folks would wear. Moccasins. Moccasin yash. And these, where they're made out of, can you tell?
Deerskin?
Deerskin, exactly. A lot of our clothes were made out of deerskin and different other animal materials.
What is this?
Oh, now that is a turtle shell. And we would use it as a shield to protect ourselves.
Cool.
This is a snapping turtle.
This is a snapping turtle shell.
Yep, a snapping turtle shell. We would use these as defense in war and in fights to protect ourselves. The weapons we would use were called tomahawks. And sometimes you see drawings of a tomahawk now in cartoons or something like that. And sometimes they're drawn as an axe, something with a metal blade on the end. But for us, they were actually just clubs made out of a single piece of wood. And they'd be about this long and with a very round end and a long thin handle. And that round end was a very hard piece of wood. And we could break bones with it. And sometimes you could kill people with it, but it was not nearly as deadly as a steel axe, where you almost always killed somebody with it. So our wars, we fought them, and we didn't fight them to kill people. Because when we fought our wars, if you killed somebody on the other side, you still were responsible to that person's family. So if you killed their hunter for their family, you would have to hunt for that family to help make amends for that after the war was over. And so you tried not to kill people. You tried to break their arm or to break their leg, make it so that they couldn't fight anymore. But you didn't want to kill people because it took away from their ability to live.
What's this? Is this a scarf?
It's a belt. And it's woven out of plant fibers. Some of the other things that our clothing was made out of is woven plant fibers. So plants that grew around in our area, like dogbane, milkweed, false nettle, would be turned into cord and string, and they'd be dyed with other different plants. Red could be made from bloodroot, black from black walnut. You could get a yellow from staghorn sumac. And these plants would be used to dye the different colors, and then they'd weave these into patterns to make belts, to make bags, to make hats, to make lots of different things.
What's this?
Now this is a rattle we'd use to make music. Yo ho yo hui hey ho hui yo hui hey ho hui ye yo hui hey ho hui yo ho hayo awana 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 yo awa hayo hawa ana yo hawa yo ho.
Nice. What's inside there?
Well, what's inside this one? This is a modern one. This is a modern made piece. It's made out of cow horn. And we didn't have cows until Europeans brought them over. So back before we had cow horns, we would often make them out of turtle shells or other different animal parts. Or we would make them out of cedar bark or gourds. This one has metal BBs on the inside of it. But before that, we would also use seeds, corn seeds sometimes, or bean seeds, or different things to make sounds inside the rattle. Some little things that could click together to make that rattly sound in a closed container.
So this is sort of like a wooden cap, right?
It is a wooden cap with a turtle on it.
How did the first Thanksgiving happen?
Well, the first Thanksgiving is kind of a thing in itself. What does the first Thanksgiving mean? So if you actually look at history in the history books and find when the first time the Pilgrims talked about a Thanksgiving was, their first Thanksgiving was to give thanks for actually wiping out a whole village of Pequot people. Some of our relatives. So they were not like, they weren't Wampanoag people, but they were similar to Wampanoag people, and they lived in a very similar way to us, and we had lots of interconnections with them. And they had gotten into a fight with the English, and the English wiped out the whole town, everybody in the whole town. And they had a Thanksgiving for that, an official Thanksgiving. And that was in the 1630s. And so that's the truth of the first historic Thanksgiving. And it's not a very pleasant thing for Native people to think about, because it's a whole town of our people that were wiped out, and it's a sad thing. But when people talk about the first Thanksgiving nowadays in America, what they often are talking about is in 1621 there was a harvest feast, and it wasn't what the English people would call Thanksgiving. They were celebrating the harvest, and everybody was eating because there was tons of food, and the English people were shooting guns. And we had made an alliance with them, like I told you, that we had made friends to protect ourselves against our enemies, right? And so we went to go run quick and hear what was happening. 90 men showed up, ready to fight, to protect the English people.
90?
90 men. And so these 90 men showed up, ready to fight and protect the English people. But there wasn't a fight going on. There was nothing but a bunch of feasting and food. So our chief, our Massasoit Usamiquin, was his name, Yellow Feather, he sent some of his men out into the woods, and they brought back 5 deer. And people ate for 3 or 4 days. And they eventually sent for his wife and some of his children. So there's maybe about 3 or 4 women and maybe 2 kids at the whole thing for Wampanoag people, and about 50 English people, and 90 Wampanoag men. But they ate and hung around for 3 days celebrating the harvest together. And that's what people come to refer to as the first Thanksgiving.
Oh, what did the Indians drink? Was water the only liquid?
Water was not the only liquid. We would make lots of teas out of different plants from around the area. There are a lot of great teas that you can drink. There are a lot of juices that you can drink from different plants that were around. Different fruit that was around that would make juice. But we didn't have orange juice, but there was plums, and there was cranberries, and there was grapes, and there was raspberries, and a lot of different things that you can use to make juice. And then there's lots of different things that we can use to make tea. Mint, there is sumac, the staghorn sumac that makes a nice tea. There's sweet fern that makes a good tea. There's lots of different things that you can use to make a tea. And for the English people, believe it or not, what they would drink was beer. Because actually back in England, the water was dirty so to the point that even nobody could drink the water. If you drank the water, it would make you sick. So if you drank beer, the alcohol in the beer would make it so that the water wouldn't make you sick. So even little kids like you, for the Pilgrims, would be drinking beer. Pretty weird, huh?
What food did you eat?
Well, the first Thanksgiving had lots of different kinds of food. Or what we call the first Thanksgiving, I should say. There was the 5 deer that people brought back from hunting. People ate duck, no turkey. They ate pumpkin, but not pumpkin pie. People ate eel and codfish. People ate corn and beans and squash and peas. Peas were something that was brought over from England that our people had never had before, and we loved peas. We loved peas so much that it was something that we always wanted to get when we went trading. We wanted to get peas from them. And another thing that we really liked that the English people brought was bacon. We loved bacon.
From the pigs.
From the pigs, yeah, because the pigs didn't come from the Americas. There was no pigs here until the English brought them. So it was something new to us that we were excited to be able to eat was pigs.
How do you celebrate Thanksgiving now?
Well, Wampanoag people celebrate Thanksgiving lots of different ways. Some people, just like most people in America, they have a turkey and cranberries and pumpkin pie and all that stuff, and that's what they have for Thanksgiving. And they come together with their family and they eat, and that's also a part of what people do nowadays. Some Wampanoag people have what we call a day of mourning, where we fast, which is to not eat from the whole day. We don't eat any food, and we stop and we think about all the different things that have happened in our history. Because lots of things have happened in our history that have made it so we haven't been able to live in our homeland in the way that we should be able to. So we think about those things in different ways that life might be better for us if the Pilgrims hadn't showed up in our country.
Do you love Thanksgiving?
I do not love Thanksgiving. I find it to be kind of a hard time of year because it's a time of year where a lot of people celebrate a story about Wampanoag people and Pilgrim people becoming friends. But the fact of the matter is that we didn't become friends. They started off trying to be friends, but it didn't take long before we had wars and they took land from us and made slaves out of our folks. And so in the end, even though we started off trying to be friends, if you tell the whole story is that Wampanoag people didn't really get treated too good by the English. So when people celebrate this friendship, it's not a friendship that was very good for us.
How do you celebrate being a Native American?
Well, I celebrate being a Native American many different ways. Almost every day. It's a part of who I am. It's my culture. It's my heritage. It's everything I've known. I've never not been a Native American. Ever since the day I was born, it's been who I am. But part of the ways that I particularly participate with my community, I like to go to powwows. And powwows are traditionally when people would come together, because every community, every town, every village of Native American people had its own different families. And people would get married and move to different villages, and you're supposed to always go back to the village that you came from at least once a year to show your face and let people know how your life was. And that's the essence of the powwow. And so I try to make it back to my powwow in Massachusetts as often as I can. I try not to miss it. But I also try to participate in different ceremonies here in California. I went to the Acorn Thanksgiving recently with the Miwok people and celebrated the acorns. And they give thanks for the acorns every year when the acorns fall, because they relied on them when times were tough and they didn't have any other food. There's always acorns to eat. Okay. And so they give thanks for them. Another way, I went to, in Fruitvale, they have the Dias de los Muertos, which is a celebration that's come up from Mexico, but it has its roots in indigenous people's celebration of honoring the dead, which our people do, Wampanoag people do, back in Massachusetts. So at the same time as here, they're honoring the dead in California, the way the Aztecs did, my people back in Massachusetts are honoring the dead who've gone on in their part of the country. And so I try to participate in the ceremonies that are happening around me. They're happening with Native American people. So we went and we honored the dead, and we put down flowers and tobacco for the dead people who had gone on, and we danced and honored the four directions, and it was a good thing. But there's lots of ways that we can celebrate our identity every day.
How can we celebrate Native Americans or learn more about it?
Well, one of the things about Native Americans is all across the whole country, there are Native American people that lived in this part of the land, whatever part of the land you're in. There was a native group that made their home there for thousands of years before it was called America. And so finding out about the people that come from your part of the world, the part of the world that you live in, is a good way to understand how Native American people are today, and how to learn more about how they fit into the world that you live in. And here in the Bay Area, it would be Ohlone people or Miwok people that you might want to find out about and learn more about. In other parts of the country, it would be other people. But wherever you are, there are some native people that have lived in that land for thousands of years that probably have a lot to offer.
What color corn did you drink?
Well, what color corn do we
eat?
Oh, all sorts of different colors of corn. Although in our part of the world, we mostly grew yellow or red corn. The types of corn that I eat nowadays, all sorts of color. Corn comes in so many colors. It comes in green, in purple, in white with purple stripes, in yellow, in white, in red, in blue with white spots. All sorts of different colors. And if you look at all the different colors of corn across the world, it's some pretty beautiful stuff. And I like it all. I like corn in general.
What is your favorite food?
Ever? Ice cream.
What's your favorite dessert?
Ice cream. It's pretty good stuff. It's hard to compare with ice cream.
Yeah.
What's your favorite food?
Oh, wasubi.
Wasubi? Oh,
Wait, spam wasubi.
oh okay. All right.
I like sushi.
Yes, sushi is good. So, good things. Are you going to be having some sushi for Thanksgiving?
No.
No.
Thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me.
Okay. This is signing off.